What's up? It's Jeremy Picker from Amber Creative.
This is Deanna with In the Zoning and Print Girl Mafia.
This is Ray Weiss with Printing United Alliance.
You're listening to the Two Regular Guys podcast.
Hosted by
Terry Combs RG, Regular Guy,
and Aaron Montgomery.
The place to be for industry news.
The best dad jokes on earth, along with relevant topics to apparel decorators.
Fashion to the people.
All right, welcome into the show. It is Friday, April 11th, 2025. I'm Terry Combs, and you can find me at terrycombs.com.
And I'm Erich Montgomery with our Success Group, and now also American Print and Supply. And today, it's official. I've announced it officially on Terry. We talked about it last week, but anyhow, today, Terry, I am excited. We get to welcome back Erich again here after a little bit and continue that discussion. I think we had a great discussion. I made you guys hit the kind of what do we call that? The speed round, so to speak. And I think we left a little meat on the bone with those things from the speed round. So we're going to touch on some more things about, filling the gap. Yep, Terry still has notes, so we have content, and looking forward to continuing that discussion, bringing Erich back in here. And I guess in a way, my goal is that we identify and discuss the gaps and opportunities, right? I don't want to make sure that we're not just pointing out maybe some of the challenges, but also what we feel like could be solutions when it comes to kind of overall education idea in our industry. So I'm excited about continuing that conversation today, Terry.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely, as you said, left meat on the bone. We tried to do lightning round. I feel like mine was lightning. I feel like Erich's was more of a slow, rumbling thunderstorm.
Sorry, I certainly didn't help, but I thought we did pretty well, though. I think we all deserve a little pat on the back for
exactly
making that happen.
All right. Well, today we get to welcome back our art guy, Dane Clement from Stalls, is going to help us look at a free alternative to Adobe Photoshop. In Dane's words, he told us this free alternative is legit. So we are excited to learn more about that. So it's always fun having Dane in. About once a month, we get to hear from Dane.
Yep. Loving having our Cajun friend join us and talk some art. So looking forward to that. And speaking of friends that we love joining us, we have Dan and MJ from World Imaging News waiting in the wings here for us, and a fun and entertaining report on the news upcoming, Terry. So you ready for that?
I am. I saw Dan for like 3 seconds in Phoenix here a couple of weeks ago. So as he was breezing by.
All right, here we go.
Hello and welcome everyone. This is Maria Jose Clavijo coming to you from Bogota, Colombia. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Two Regular Guys.
And I'm Dan, broadcasting from Los Angeles, California, with the World Imaging News team. We've had an incredibly news-packed month, and with trade show season in full swing, the pace isn't going to slow down anytime soon.
That's right, Dan. The DTF Expo just wrapped up in Mesa, Arizona, and ISA is coming at the end of the month in Las Vegas. I'm particularly so excited because I'll be reporting from 2 trade shows in Bogota, Colombia this June. My first time covering events in my home country.
Hey, and don't forget FESPA, MJ. We'll also be providing coverage from Berlin, Germany at FESPA this May. Between all these events, we'll have plenty of industry developments to share with our Two Regular Guys listeners in the coming months.
In our last newsletter, we covered the DTF Expo in Mesa, Arizona. This show was entirely focused on direct-to-film printing with many industry colleagues in attendance. Notable exhibitors included Roland displaying the YT300, SDS with their variety of DTF products, and our own Two Regular Guys host Terry Combs showcasing his shake and bake system with the Epson SureColor G6070 DTF film printer. And hey Dan, did I tell you about the guy who could sell ice even to Eskimos?
Come on, MJ. That joke's getting old. Definitely falls into the dad joke category. Sorry about that, Aaron and Terry. Actually, Terry was extremely busy during my time at the show, So I hope he got lots of sales. Like Terry said, we saw each other for maybe 3 seconds. So it was just a short time. On the second day, I had more opportunity to explore and speak with vendors since attendance was very light that day. I noticed several significant developments worth sharing. First, DTG Connection introduced a new printer called the XTF Pro DTF. This appears to be one of the most advanced and unique high-quality units entering the market. My sources indicate it's manufactured in South Korea and features several exclusive capabilities not found in competing products, including Ricoh printheads designed for industrial production. Secondly, the show featured extensive conversations about how the tariffs could reshape the DTF market. According to recent updates, and is changing daily as we know, most tariffs have been suspended except for a baseline 10% rate, with China, of course, being the notable exception. This exemption positions South Korean manufactured products like XTF Pro DTF at a significant competitive advantage compared to Chinese alternatives. With Chinese imports now subject to a steep 145% tariff, price increase seem to be inevitable across the board. In fact, several major Japanese suppliers have already begun announcing higher prices, and we expect prices to increase across our entire industry.
Building on that point, then, several vendors at the DTF Expo announced supplier changes to ensure American-made products. One well-known company, Prism Inks, announced during the show that their DTF ink and all components are now made in the US, and as a result, they've actually reduced their prices by 13%.
That's pretty amazing. While we typically don't talk about competitive issues between two companies, the proximity of GSG and NASDAR with booths directly across the aisle from one another made the contrast too compelling to ignore. GSG was highlighting its new alliance with Rock, while NASDAR prominently featured M&R equipment, a line previously distributed by GSG just weeks earlier. With the Grimco acquisition of GSG still fresh, the shift in distribution strategy is creating noticeable ripple effects, and the competitive contrast was on full display.
This competition and the integration of GSG into the Grimca company is going to have a major impact on distribution in the US market. Then, some other news we've been covering includes an exciting collaboration between Caesar and Prism Inks on a new product line. There are whispers about the launch of an innovative new vinyl and a new ink formulation specifically designed for the desktop market. It's shaping up to be quite interesting.
Speaking of industry buzz, we've heard that several vendors are planning to unveil major new products at either ISA or FESPA, while one company appears to be stepping back. Brother Industrial is reportedly developing a large format DTF printer featuring their own proprietary printhead technology. This could mark Brother's serious push into the large format market, especially after their unsuccessful attempt to acquire Roland. On another front, we're hearing that Ricoh might be completely withdrawing from the DTF business, which is really surprising considering they showcased a brand new prototype unit at last year's Printing United.
For sure, we know that our industry is full of surprises and changes, and we'll be right here to report it all as it happens.
You're right, MJ. Hey, to stay up to date on the latest news and trends in digital imaging, please go over to worldimagingnews.com and
worldimagingNewsLatina.com
to sign up for our weekly newsletter, Win Quick News. And that's the Win News, folks. I'm Dan Barefoot.
and I'm MJ.
And until the next time, stay healthy and keep on smiling.
Manténganse saludables y sigan sonriendo.
Love it. Love it. Terry, I know Dan did some amazing things while he was on the vendor space and involved in the operation of his business. before starting World Imaging News, but I kind of feel like maybe he's found his calling here. I just love how passionate he is about sharing these topics and keeping us up to date, and then having MJ along brings just such a refreshing voice. So we appreciate them being here with us, Terry.
Absolutely, and every time those guys do the news, I'm like, I didn't know that. I hadn't heard that. I'm over
I
here-
know.
I'm over here
Can't wait
writing
for our
notes.
news segments so I can learn just like you.
Hey, it's interesting about this South Korea because Aaron, you might remember, but back in our U.S. Screen days, we had some DTG machines being manufactured in South Korea, and they were rock solid.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and that
Yeah,
was
definitely interesting to see all those
15.
shifts, and then the conversation about moving things back here to the U.S. Right? Obviously that's a way to overcome some of the challenges. So we'll see. Be interesting to see how that stuff plays out as we go forward here.
Well, and Dan was correct. We were just swamped at the Equipment Zone booth with the at the DTF Expo because I may have mentioned this before, but Equipment Zone is the only dealer in the country that has the new G6070. So our booth was packed the entire time. Everybody. I mean, I had somebody from Texas, somebody from Michigan say, "I flew here just to see this machine."
Oh wow, cool,
Yeah,
very cool.
it was awesome.
And the
then
bonus, they got Terry, so that.
exactly. Right. And then to wrap up a crazy week for me with the tariffs and then not tariffs, and I was all ready to go on do the show. Since we're talking about interacting with the regulators, you can interact with me for a second.
Yeah.
All ready to go on the air, and thought I'll just take the dogs out back for a few minutes, and one of them fell in the pool. So I am wearing different clothes now than I was just a
Wow.
little while ago.
Interesting. Wow. Okay.
At least the water has warmed up. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, before we get too far away from it, Ramona mentioned, based on the news segment there, she says, I love their back and forth conversational presentation. It makes me feel part of the conversation. I love it. Yeah, agreed. Love it. Love that stuff.
Sure.
So continuing on that track of interacting with the regulators, we had Chuck checking in bright and early here. Good morning from sunny Florida. Right. So you and Chuck can talk about all the sunshine that you get to. What is that? 9 inches of sunshine and no end in sight. Is that the way that it goes?
Exactly. We're supposed to hit 100 today. So
Oh, wow. Already.
yeah.
I guess it is. It's just been colder here than normal. So I'm not quite ready to make that shift in my brain that my family is going to be dealing with 100. And speaking of my family, my son, Crafty Scotty, is tuned in this morning. So good to see you, buddy.
Wow.
And yeah, he's there in that soon to be 100-degree heat. So actually not too far from where you're at there, Terry. And then we've got Kingsbury Craft checking in. So good morning to you. And Rena checking in. Talked to Ramona already. Good to see Ramona here. And Rena is looking forward to hearing Dane's art wisdom. Yeah, it's always fun to learn from Dane. Frank is checking in, says, good afternoon, listening while working. So great to have you along, Frank. We've got Doug checking in. Hello, everybody. And Ramona said, we had snow just the other day. Not much. Didn't last, but still cold. Yeah. So, and no 100 degrees there in Florida yet either, Terry, just so you're aware of the.
Mine's a dry heat.
It's a dry heat.
It really gets to 115. It's hot.
When you have to drive with oven mitts, Terry, right? Like I grew up there, so I know about the third-degree burns you could get from the seatbelts back in the day when they were metal. Okay, well, good stuff there from Win and World Imaging News. So make sure you check that out. Always up to date, and looking forward to continuing to learn more from them and staying in tune. But another thing that we look forward to every week, at least I do, I don't know if everybody else does, but hey, it's our show, we get to do it, is the dad joke, Terry. And you've got this one made me think, so I'm I'm excited to hear what everybody else thinks, and we'll see. You know what? Before we do that, though, we are going to have Erich in here, and I just think that the regulators need to get to see Erich's reaction to these things.
Well, they need to see it.
We get to have all the fun, and we want to share that fun. So thanks for having me.
Fine.
It'll be so let's put the dad joke, then we'll get into the rest of the show here.
All right, picture Mr. Miyagi.
Okay.
So, guys, did you know a Japanese gardener asked me what I knew about bonsai trees?
Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah, I said very little.
You see the trees are small. They're very little trees. They're short. That's the joke part.
See, there we go.
Wondering.
That's wow. Yeah.
All right. Before we dive in, we want to thank everybody for checking out the Two Regular Guys podcast. We still need your voices. We would love to have the regulators participate in the show intros. Go to osg.link/intro, read a few sentences, and be a part of every show. We are always looking for new guests. So if you or anyone you know would like to join us, go to calendly.com/2 regular guys to book a future episode, or email us at info@tworegularguys.com with your show ideas. If you are listening to the podcast version of this show, where most of our listeners are, we'd appreciate you sharing the Two Regular Guys podcast with all of your industry friends so they can become regulators too. We would appreciate you giving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Podcast, YouTube Podcast, wherever you do your podcast listening, we are there. And if you're watching us live right now, please join in with your comments and your questions.
Absolutely. Speaking of comments and questions, though, we do have to get a couple here. Kim, where did it go? Oh, there it is. Okay. Kim Johnson, little face palm. So
yeah, for sure.
All the way from Oklahoma.
There you go. Thanks for being here to share that with Terry, Kim.
Visiting her son and granddaughter. So
awesome. Love it. Rena says thanks to Eric. See, another reason we had to bring Eric in so he could give us the visual of that
useful
dad joke there. And then my son said a dad joke is only a dad joke when it becomes apparent. So I'm passing it down already. That's a proud moment right there. Thanks, Keegan. All right. And Ramona said I had to pause for that one. Very little. Oh, little tiny. Yep. And Chuck said you had to have the visual for that. So, hey, we go all across the
man. I tried
conversation for dad jokes here.
It was actually I liked that one. Okay, I know I play up the role now. I'm like the heel for the dad joke now, but that was a good one. I liked it.
Yeah, you need the heel. All right, so let's get on with the show here, you guys. Let's start diving back in. I know, like I said, we kind of taken the last part of it, but knowing us, we'll make it, another couple shows at least. But let's see how far we get through here today. So as I mentioned last week, I kind of forced you guys into a lightning round, and because I think you guys were happy to move on, and I was like, let's get this done. I was gonna make it happen. No, but just kind of. I don't know if you guys wouldn't mind summarizing, and we don't really have this in notes, so I'm already off track. It's shocking, right? What was your big takeaway from last week? What did you hope people heard last week, and kind of summary of what we were talking about?
Well, I think it's part of it is some pullback from vendors doing training, and the example I gave last week is the fact that at one time Epson required every dealer to offer training on their DTG and now their DTF printer, and they don't require that anymore. I don't think it's because Epson doesn't care if people get trained. I think it's because from certain vendors or from certain dealers, their support department gets tons of phone calls about how do I do this? How do I do that? So Epson has taken a step back, recording dozens and dozens and dozens of short training videos. And I think it's just their effort to help those folks that, it's like when you buy a direct to garment printer from let's use an example of an embroidery company. Well, the guy that shows up to train you could really, really show you how to run an embroidery machine, but might be reading along in the manual with you to train you on a DTG machine. So I think that's I'm assuming that that's the reasoning. And I talk to Epson folks all the time, and I don't know why I've never said, "Is this why you're doing this?" The flip side of that is, again, and not to be plugging Equipment Zone, but that's my current experience. We train on all these machines, and we think that it brings customers to us because not only do we sell you equipment, but we used to go and knock on your door, but in COVID we set up 2 TV studios or Zoom studios and do a day of training with you, and the techs like Roy here in Phoenix, he won't hang up with you until you're getting good prints, and then offering free support for as long as you own the equipment. So that's a recommendation from me that if you're out there in the world selling equipment or even supplies, offer training to people. I've been going to Chicago for 15 years, once a quarter, and do a screen printing training event at Atlas Screen Supply. And just like us, very into the whole education and training.
Yeah.
They see the value in offering their customers the ability. And guess what? They're not all their customers. Maybe half those folks bought equipment elsewhere, and said, "Okay, now what?" And of course, now what do you hear? Well, I watched some YouTube videos, and I'm like cringing, thinking, "Oh my gosh, whose videos did you watch?"
Yeah.
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 And at least they make the decision to pay for a class. And along those lines, and I'll just make one more point. If you're out there and you're hungry for information, make sure you're going to trade shows. There's tons of great seminars and great people to talk to at the shows.
Yeah, agreed. Good. Cool. Eric, your take on kind of last week and any lead-ins or things to kind of go off of pigtail off of Terry there?
Well, I think some of the things I thought were interesting about last week that I think are worth kind of still chewing over and keeping in mind is that we talked about the difference between having a library of content and having direct training. And I think sometimes we confuse the ability of the technology with the drive for what we're trying to do. It's great to have these big, deep libraries of content, but sometimes they are entertaining content. Sometimes we confuse the difference. And I'll cop to this. My show is a live show, and finding one little piece of content in a live show library, despite the fact that you can do searching and stuff on YouTube, automatic searching through the transcripts, that can be hard for someone, whereas a textbook like or a training like environment might be more structured. And sometimes I think we've forgotten that, not all the time, but we do. Even when we see a vendor do something really awesome, like throw together a big library of very directed content, it might not be the same as having somebody walk you through something. Yeah. And it's not equivalent. We should probably think about all those things, but also understand that we can use these online channels very much like Terry explained. We can use the technology that gave us the ability to do Zoom calls and, these live channels that we do and content. We can use that technology to also do directed training.
Yeah.
So we don't have to lose it. But the other thing I had to cop to last week, and people have kind of talked with me about this, is that ultimately, even I, who does all of this online training, all of this teaching at shows, travels frequently, at a loss to make that happen, I still think that where the rubber meets the road is hands-on experience, and that you can't do one without the other. Yeah. Or at least you do yourself a disservice if you don't get there pretty quickly. Like, you do need to emphasize that part of it too. So that was kind of an interesting last week that came up, is that I do this all the time. I tend to like to tell on myself. If I think there's something that we can improve, I'll tell on myself and say, here's the part where I'm not hitting all the buttons for everybody. And for me, that's probably it. It's the fact that we do need this more regimental training, and the fact that we do need hands-on experience to be part of that initial, especially the initial setup for people.
Yeah,
it just absolutely makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And what you're talking about is having a base, a base of knowledge then you can go out and use that online and know, oh, this is really great information, or this person doesn't know what they're talking about. And I certainly would recommend, if you can figure it out when you're out there getting online information, who is this person giving it to you?
Of course.
Have they been printing, screen printing? Have they been screen printing in their basement for the last 6 months and now they're doing videos, or have they lived the life of a garment decorator and now they're sharing their experiences? And so, but you need some kind of foundation.
Well, I absolutely have to bring up one last point to tie up that whole segment for me. Two things, and I won't do the Rolling Thunder for like a half an hour. I'll try and actually hit this. Number one, absolutely YouTube content. And I'll say this is bigger in the craft to business space that I see in embroidery. There are channels out there where half of the desire for people to watch them is the grinding through of how it is to live building a business while you're doing something else, while you're working another job, while you're a single mom. And some of it, you're looking at it going, I think people are watching for the drama of this person's life, not to learn stuff. That's not bad, but then we should understand where the education line is between those things. And in fact, I'll say, even talking about our stuff, and we have a good comment from Ramona here too. We're talking about not being able to find things sometimes on live shows. She says, I agree with Eric. And for myself, my content creation, I've been trying to make better effort to make the title more keyword search ready. Absolutely. I'll say also, I do an hour to an hour and a half each week. That's not always tolerable for someone who's trying to look for a little snippet of information. I understand that.
Yeah.
I think that's real. Plus, I'll say in the embroidery world recently, we've seen there's a wonderful educator named Bonnie Nielsen who worked for thread companies. She does now. She works for Ackerman or Alman, if you know them. She has a book that she's had out for many years. We finally got a channel in. The guys over at Embroidery Nerd kind of took it upon themselves to help with the importing. They were kind of shopping around to do that, and they had a store they were running, so they've been importing her book. And people are buying and reading her book, and they're absolutely devouring it. It's not, that book has been in publishing for years, admittedly out of Germany, a little expensive, but at a high cost, they are buying a hardcover book about digitizing. That is, I believe, like 10 years old. There's nothing wrong with that. The book has awesome information. She's a fantastic writer, and I imported the book from Germany years ago. So I'm one of those people who wanted to support her in that and loved the stuff she was putting out. But think how hungry people are for regimental information they can refer to, that in my space, they are buying a $70 book and reading a hardcover book at home to learn a digital art. That should let us know that though it is awesome, we have this breadth of digital information and video out there, that there is a hunger for some format and for some structure and for reference materials. So those of us who are making materials and making content should realize content's great to get eyes. For depth and for training, we might want to really think about what that means to make something a little more durable and a little more regimental as far as how it presents information.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. So I've been struggling in my head here. Like, do I want to go back and for time's sake, right? but I do want to go back real quick because we got a couple other points I want to make before we take a quick break and then get to the rest of it here. But I do want to also go back to what you were saying about, getting the hands-on experience too, Eric, and what you kind of brought to the table, right? So Terry says, you got to have that foundation from the front end. But I also think there's a side of that sometimes we miss too is, okay, Eric's hour and a half take up, amazing, incredible, right? College level information, zero value to it unless you go and do the thing. Right. And not that says nothing about Eric, that you like the value's there, but you, the consumer of this information, if you don't do anything with it, then you're kind of in a way wasted your time. Right. And so, but part of doing it means you're going to have to go break it. You're going to have to go mess it up. You're going to have to go and go, well, Eric said to do this, but it's not working for me. Mm-hmm. So you can either go, well, Eric's information is bad, which is not the case. What you need to do is go, well, what's the solution for me, right? How can I fix this, right? And then, I think that's where real education comes from. That's why we go to school and we sit in a classroom, because they're doing the work in that moment, right? Well, that's why we go to Terry's screen printing class, because not only do you get to learn from Terry, but then you've got Terry there behind you going, okay, move the angle, do this, right? Like that kind of thing. So I think that's a point that I didn't want to leave out. So anything you guys need to follow on that, or did I do a good job?
I think you covered it.
You got it. I mean, I think that's kind of what we said. And maybe the only thing to finish up on that is we kind of made the point that we will have to, if we want new people coming into this industry, we also have to foster them and get them on equipment.
Yeah.
Which means sometimes that might be a thing that we miss, is that we aren't, because I know it might be hard for somebody to get to an embroidery machine that somebody will let you run and be on. Well, admittedly, that also means you have to be willing to go kind of be an intern sometimes. It means you may not step right into a big production level role, but we need to put people who want to learn on that equipment.
Yeah.
If they want to learn, we need to let them learn. We need to not worry about them running off to a competitor, and we need to get them on equipment and teach them.
Yeah, totally.
You know, it's interesting too that in my class, one of the things that I say after we do because we have several segments when you're actually out there on the floor printing, and I said, here's what I can't give you in class. Yeah. I can't give you 500 shirts to print. And so you need to take what you've learned here today about how to pull or push the squeegee, and then go home and do it. And 500 prints, you're going to say, okay, I get it. I feel the angle. I feel the the proper pressure, and so so you can't just the hands-on is great. Now you have to go home and do it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I'll say the one thing I love that I did different that I still think is valuable. Once you have done that, then it's awesome to be with theory people. Then it's cool to go out there and be with folks like me who are going to say, all right, now that you've touched this thing and you know how it's working, where can we push it?
Yeah.
How can we do something more or something cool or something different? Yeah. Now that you've touched it, now that you have that basics and you get that almost muscle memory, even in doing a digital art, you get kind of the muscle memory of doing the thing, of planning and setting it up and knowing where you're headed. What do we do now? And how do we make it something different and advance it from here? That's when the theory stuff gets fun.
Yep. Cool. All right. A couple more points before we take a break here, but I just wanted to say hi to my friend Toby. Hello. She says, love the whole panel. Perfect. Thanks for being here, Toby. Appreciate you. All right. So we're kind of talking about gaps and growing pains here. And, Terry, you gave us that example of the changes at Epson. You even mentioned sometimes cringing when you hear somebody say, well, I went and watched this video on YouTube, right? And so there is a little bit of this trap. Erich, I think you said it best last week when you talked about the fact that we've kind of gone from not enough information to now so much information that how do we discern good from bad, right? Yeah. And so I guess that would be a question I'd love to learn from you guys here. How can decorators tell what's good advice versus, maybe it's outdated, maybe it's flat out wrong, right? Because a lot of times, like, things get perpetuated. I think you were telling a story last week about things that you're still dealing with like the flashing in between, where maybe it was right at some point because it was a Band-Aid for something that needed to be fixed, right? Like, I mentioned the dipping the mugs thing, right? That was a Band-Aid for poor quality, and we don't have that anymore. But yet, fortunately, I think we put that one to rest. But anyways, so Erich, I don't know whoever wants to start first. I don't really care. But what's good advice versus outdated versus flat out wrong? How can we discern?
You want to go first, Erich?
Sure. I'll say first of all, you'll see that most of us who have been in the business for a while will show you what we've done. And there's just sometimes that's once again where the rubber meets the road. Can you do it? Can you do the thing? And if you have samples that show you can do the thing, you can do the thing. That's part of it. But I'll say for me, the way I kind of structure my rubric on this, I'd say I look for someone who is doing the kind of work I want to do as well, and showing that experience. Because the truth of the matter is, if you are doing in the embroidery world, if you're doing something that is boutique, that's one off, you might do incredibly work heavy pieces that you charge a ton for. And you're doing stuff that, to my mind, the efficiency is wild. I would never do, because I wouldn't put my hands on a piece that long and expect to get paid in a production environment for business to business apparel. So sometimes this stuff doesn't transfer, and it's not that it's bad information or misinformation necessarily, but it has to be toward the right end. if you're looking at production speed and efficiency, you don't necessarily want to do the same things that someone would do for a one-off piece for maybe like costuming, where they're doing a lot of handwork on a piece. But the thing is, it doesn't make their information necessarily wrong. They may be using materials in a way that makes sense for them, but it may not make sense for me. So the thing to understand about it is that you have to be in your lane as well as with people who, they have their bona fides. They are people who have done the work. You can tell where they worked. They know, they have samples you've seen. They are showing stuff that is theirs. That all makes sense. That helps to know that someone's doing the right thing. And honestly, you look at the community that's around them. Who are the people who are joining in with them? Who's amplifying their voice? You can see what's going on if you're paying attention. But I would say that there are things that people do that work in a certain respect that don't work for everybody, and you have to pay attention to that. For me, because I tend to be thinking in a commercial way, I'm going to look for solutions that emphasize efficiency, production speed, and profitability. Yeah. That may not be for everybody, but if you see someone and you can tell they're not doing that, they're using tons of material, they're putting tons of work into something, they are maybe working in a way that isn't the same as you're going to work, think twice about their answer, even if their sample looks good. Yeah. You have to say, all right, they're using tons of materials and doing everything by hand, and their sample looks incredible and the piece looks good, but there's no way on earth I can do that for the 1,000 shirts that I'm trying to get out the door. Maybe that's not the way that we need to work. And it doesn't mean it's necessarily wrong. It does mean it may not be suited to your environment. It's kind of like survival of the fittest, right? It's you're fit for the environment you're in, not just fit forever. If the environment changes wildly, the answer changes wildly too.
Sure.
And honestly, that's a big deal.
Yeah. All right. So Terry, what about you? What's your take on that idea?
I think one thing that people, when you go to the internet for information, be aware that most of what you see there are Band-Aids, as you mentioned, Aaron, which means I couldn't figure this out. So here's the Band-Aid that I put on it to get it out the door. And that's what you're going to see a lot of it. Like you were talking about flash between colors. Well, that's a Band-Aid for something else you did wrong. My approach is more, here's an example. When I was in Kansas City, we were doing $13.5 million in screen printing per year. And my average order size was 72 pieces. So I'm going to come back and say, so what do I need to do to get those pieces out the door? Clearly, I need to have the fastest setup and tear down possible. And here's how I do that. And so my approach is from real world experience, not sitting in my basement trying to figure out how to make this print work without getting smears around the edges because my screens aren't right or my mesh isn't right. Or I like to approach from real world. I did have a Yale chemistry professor in one of my screen printing classes, and her little review at the end was too many anecdotes. and this was in Chicago. And of course, we, at the end of every class, we sit and read through all these, and have a beer before they take me to the airport. And one of the principals at Atlas Screen Supply started laughing when he read it out loud. And he said, this is a 2-day class. If you didn't have anecdotes, it'd only be 2 hours long. but most people say, I can understand what you're getting at because you're relating it to real life experience. This was your challenge, and this was how you resolved that challenge.
Yeah.
And it comes back to when you're learning from somebody, learn who they are first.
Yeah.
See if that experience that they have is legit.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say this, Terry, like one of the things that I've noticed if we're trying to discern, that's the word I was looking for, between good advice versus outdated versus flat out wrong here is if it's a hack, if it's a magic bullet, do this and all of your life's problems will go away, then what you were saying before, it's a Band-Aid. Because the root of everybody's challenges is only going to come from internal, the way they operate. And so just because Terry does it this way doesn't mean that I'm going to be successful with that way. And so what I've really kind of latched my teeth into as I look at what education means and whatnot is, if the education is inspirational in a, like you said, the anecdote, I get to relate to this, and it's not prescriptive, like do this or you're going to fail. Like, here's the hack, do this now. Okay, great. You just gave me a Band-Aid. Now, if I can take that Band-Aid and be inspired by it and find a root cause of the challenge that I'm facing, then that's an inspirational take. So I think in a lot of ways, all of the education can be useful. It's just how we take it, right? And how we apply it to our own situations. Are we applying it from it, I'm inspired by this to figure out what works for me? Or am I, I kind of joke that a lot of business owners actually want to be employees with opinions. Somebody tell me what to do, but then when it doesn't work, I'm going to have an opinion for why it didn't, even though it's my business and I'm 100% responsible for it. So it's those business owners that are inspired to make it work for them. I think that can take really any education and make it work for them. But yeah, I always kind of like, I see somebody going, this is the way it's done, and if you don't do it this way, it's not, you're going to fail. I go, cool, next. Right. I want to understand the concept.
There's stuff that's straight physical. I'll give you that, because there's parts of embroidery, and I'm sure screen printing is exactly the same way, where it is a science. It's physical. The thing that's happening is in the world. It is happening with thread and garment and stabilizer, and there are ways this works. However, what I always tell people is, like, there's multiple ways to achieve it. I talk about stabilizer a lot because this is where we get a lot of differences of opinion. I use one piece of medium cutaway for a lot of what I do because it was really easy and that's production friendly. And we grab the same piece of stabilizer and we go for it. And I don't overuse it. And I don't want it to feel bad on the person by being too thick. But there are people out there who are prescribing 5 pieces of stabilizer to make things work. They're like, 2 of this kind, and then we put this one on, and then we put this to make it crisp, and then we do this on the other side. And they're making this big stack stabilizer. I think it'd be uncomfortable. But here's the thing. Their design's going to look great. Why? Because they still attached that to the basic problem they had, which is that the material's shifting too much or stretching or bunching up in the hoop. What I like to do is explain the Band-Aid. I go, here, well, the problem is the same. Whether it's, I'm going to tell you how to fix that through lightening up your stitching and making sure your hooping's right and using the right stabilizer and backing down some of that excess. They're teaching you to use a bunch of stabilizers so you don't have to do that. And so you can throw any design on it and it'll make it work. Those things are both addressing the actual problem, which is the garment is moving around in the hoop too much, or it's scrunching up, or it's stretching out, and you don't want that.
Yeah.
Both of those things are addressing a basic physical reality of what it is to do embroidery. It's about how you want to do it. And if you stop and say to somebody, that's where the explanation is important. You're like, hey, this is why I don't do that, because I want it to feel good on a human. And that's what garments are. They're going to be on a person one day. If it feels like a piece of cardboard, it's going to feel really junky. That's why I don't do it. Here's why I approach it the way I do. And also, I'll stop and tell people, here's what the Band-Aid is. And does it make your outlines line up the way they should? Yeah, it does. But here's why I don't do it. And here's the reason. And if you want to do that, okay. And honestly, if you're using your embroidery to, make a book cover, maybe you don't care. And that's okay. Yeah. But it's not something I would do on a light performance wear shirt that I'm going to throw on a person, or it's going to scratch the heck out of them, or feel like they're wearing cardboard. There's reasons for this stuff, but if we explain it in a way that, like, as you said, instead of, do as I say, if it's, here's the pros and cons, and here's why people do what they do, and here's the physicality, here's the reality of doing this stuff day to day and what it does, that's education. That's giving somebody the tools to make decisions for themselves. Not just saying, here is the, Betty Crocker recipe for this sucker, mix it the way I say it, I do, and it's going to turn out. And maybe it does, but it doesn't address why people might want something a little different once they have to solve their own problems as they crop up.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it definitely rolling thunder, or a little bit of
Also guilty.
You gotta not have me on anymore. It's too much. I got opinions.
Now, I do need to get to Ramona's comment here, because this is just something that I feel a little bit proud of, because I feel like every time I'm out there talking pricing, I bring this up as a way to remind people that maybe this isn't the right thing to think about. Still out there, $1 per 1,000 stitch. I'm not seeing as often. So I'm going to take that as a win, not seeing it as often.
That's good. Yeah, agreed.
Eric and I are on a mission. So okay.
I hear you can use a paper towel for the. Oh, never mind.
No, boy. All right. Let's hold on.
Stop it.
Now I need to start muting mics here myself. Okay. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take a break here in just 1 second, but I do want to bring the regulators in here. Ramona, been great. Toby, thanks for chiming in. I want to hear from the rest of you guys that are tuned in right now. What kind of education has helped you the most in your journey? Call out something specific. What do you do? Like whatever. I would love to hear this conversation happening in the comments here. If you're watching the replay, same thing. Just get in the comments there. If you are somebody that's listening to the podcast version of this, take a moment every once in a while, pop over to our Facebook page and jump in and join the conversation there from that side. Terry, one of our favorite Reggie Awards is always the Education Award, because we get to kind of see who's doing what and that kind of thing. And so I'm just curious if you guys could answer that as the regulators out there. So with that being said, we've kind of teased this a while back, and we finally got everything together, and we do have a sponsor of the Two Regular Guys. Really exciting stuff here. So let's take a quick break and hear from Promo Hunt here. And with the kind of changes happening in the blank apparel space, this could be a really good opportunity for you if you haven't already signed up with them. But I'll let Tony talk about it here.
If you sell decorated apparel, then you're constantly on supplier websites like Sanmar, Alpha Broder, and SNS Activewear, comparing prices and checking inventory. Stop wasting time comparing prices the hard way. Just install PromoHunt's free browser extension. Then, when you're on a supplier website, PromoHunt will automatically compare your prices with all your suppliers and will let you know if you can save. With PromoHunt, you'll always be just one click away from seeing all your prices and inventory in one screen. PromoHunt shows other helpful information too, like similar product ideas, supplier phone numbers, preferred pricing, and coupons on thousands of supplier websites. PromoHunt saves you time and money, helping you quickly find and buy great products at competitive prices. The best part is that PromoHunt is completely free. Join 7,000 decorators and distributors that use PromoHunt every day to save time and money. Visit promohunt.com and sign up in less than 60 seconds.
All right. Well, check that out. Again, go to promohunt.com. Actually, if you go to promohunt.com/apparel, and just one L on that one there. There we go. Promohunt.com/apparel. And you can check that out. And we appreciate them sponsoring the show. So we'll be hearing from Tony regularly here. And really, really cool product. I actually have it. I'm not an active daily decorator, but occasionally, I'll do something for a friend and even for me, it's super useful. It just makes things really easy. I plugged in SNS and Sanmar, and it tells me, okay, here's where you're at. Cool. Easy.
And it's free, as Tony says, and my mom says all the time, why is it free? All right. Well, hey, guys, here we are towards the end of another show, and I still have notes. And so next week, I think each of us should say, if I were still an active decorator, how would I handle education in my own shop? And all three of us could give that example. What do you think?
Yeah, I like that. And then, I think paired with that, right, we can talk a little bit about, you guys know me, I love kind of looking into the crystal ball as best we can and what could be next, and what's working, what's not working. So Rena shared, love education that makes you think outside of the box. Right. And so, that type of thing. Michelle said mentors. Rena and Jan are her mentors and don't know where I'd be without them. Right. So, again, love it to hear what you guys, education's worked for you guys. But then next week we can talk about, some of the future as well. But I think perfect question, Terry, to kind of anchor in. If we were an active decorator, how would you structure your your shop. So sounds like a great plan. So Eric, sorry, dude, we're dragging you back on again.
Sure, I get really busy, and then you just put me back on screen several times.
Yeah. All good. You always figure it out. We're good.
We'll work it out. It's all
Yeah,
good.
back in the old days before we were on camera, Eric would be a guest, and somewhere in the show we'd say, "Eric, are you digitizing right now?" Yes, while you're talking to us.
Almost every time. Yeah. This is 100% true, and I will verify that.
Yeah, that's funny. So our friend here, Doug Quinn, says his entire education in the industry is listening to me and Terry banter back and forth over wings and beer on the Steel Pier in Atlantic City. So
Exactly right, Doug.
Doug not being an active decorator, but he is someone who can hook you up with a beautiful island retreat. He is actually building, going to be building custom homes in the U.S. Virgin Islands in St. Croix. So
That's
if
awesome.
you want any information about that, reach out to me. This is a cool opportunity, I think. Terry, we need to get lots next to each other there so we can just hang out. And
I think so too. Doug, man, that's a cool deal.
I can see an OSG retreat
knows more
happening.
about garment decorating than a lot of people who are daily decorators, because Doug's been listening to the show right from the first.
That's true.
Just because he's a loyal friend.
Yes, thank you, Doug. All right, buddy. So Terry, tell us where you will be at here. We'll hit a couple of these things, and then we will get Dane in here to learn about this Photoshop alternative here in just a moment.
All right. My complete screen printing business course. I'm going to be in Chicago at Atlas Screen Supply June 7th and 8th. I've got some more events coming up that I will be announcing soon. You can go to terrycombs.com to find out more.
Awesome. Looking forward to hearing about that, Terry. For me, first and foremost, I'm really excited about all the stuff happening over at American Print and Supply. And one of those things is I was able to secure a discount for the regulators and my OSG community. So if you are looking for a transfer vendor, this new role I have has created this opportunity to share with you guys. If you go over to transferdepot.com, you get 10% off of your orders there. If you use the code AMONTGO2025, not the easiest, but AMONTGO 2025. This is what happens when you let engineers pick the coupon codes. But you put that in at checkout, and that's going to get you 10% off. They've got fast shipping. It's a really great product. In fact, you can get an extended gamut transfer, which is not something you can get at a lot of places. So they've got an 8-color transfer option. Plus, they do have UV DTF, the stickers, some people might call those. But if you need any help or have any questions about that, I'm here to help you. So let me know. Secondly, for me, what I wanted to share here, I've got some live education coming up at the Graphics Pro Expo in Indianapolis, titled Marketing Better in 2025. And that is happening on June 13th. And that will be at 8:30 a.m. local time there in Indianapolis. And interestingly enough, Indianapolis, you might think it's in Central Time, but it's actually in Eastern Time Zone. Anyways, if you want a session that's packed with practical tips to help you find clarity in your messaging so you can stand out in a noisy world and connect authentically with your ideal customers, I'd love to see you in that class. Go to graphics-pro-expo, and you can use the code APAS25IN to get 25% off of their registration over there. And the early bird registration is only happening for like another 8 or 9 days. So it's super cheap to get in, especially with that 50% off code, but do it quickly. So graphics-pro-expo.com, APAS25IN, and that'll give you 50% off. And then lastly, I would love to invite you guys to all come join us over the Entrepreneur Success Hub, which is a free online community over on Facebook. Whether you are new to business or a seasoned pro, the Hub is your place to rediscover joy and excitement in the world of entrepreneurship, learning how to work on your business, not just in it all the time, connecting with like-minded, supportive community, asking questions, getting help, growing faster. Plus, if you've got information to share, come on over, share your wisdom and help others thrive as well. You can join us at osg.link/group. What about you, Eric? What's on the
Well, today we have the take up as usual, but today is episode 220, a Q&A about warping, text manipulation, envelopes, and templates. And I'm going to revisit some stuff that people have been asking about recently. And I asked reviewer questions concerning the difference between text warping tools and graphical envelopes, typography terrors that are committed by embroiderers. So some things you shouldn't do with type that often people do. So some assumptions about setup for native or keyboard fonts. It's a old school term for embroidery for fonts you can use right out of the box. And the role of working file templates. So templates that you can edit and reuse for embroidery designs, especially with text. So we're going to talk a lot about text today and be able to get into kind of the nitty gritty of how that warping works and a little bit about software differences too. So join us live at 2:30 Mountain Time, 4:30 Eastern. I'll get used to that someday. And share some insights about how you deal with lettering. Go to erichcampbell.com. You can go to the Take Up tab at the top and grab that. Or if you are on YouTube, Facebook, anywhere else, you search for Erich Campbell, that funny little H, you'll get it. I'm even streaming on Twitch, so you've got no excuse. If you want to check in today, you can check in live.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. Love it. And yeah, check that out. And always, as I said earlier on in the show, always amazing information. And also make sure you guys are checking out Terry's screen printing classes. I hear all the feedback. I've actually been able to sit in on one and actually feel like I could actually screen print if I ever wanted to.
I need to get somewhere where I'm closer to Terry when he's doing one of those, because I feel like all these years, even of making films and doing everything else, the one thing I've never done is just literally be there pulling the squeegee. And I feel like I'm out of the loop, man. Get that hands-on experience.
Yeah.
Front of the press.
Cool. Well, let's get out of the way here. Let's let Dane in here, our resident art guy. We can come up with all sorts of nicknames for him, but we'll just leave it there for right now. And so whenever you are ready.
All good.
I know. I'm trying to get there. All right, here we go. Hopefully. Is it working? What do you see? Tell me see photo P. Here we go. All right. So, hey, everybody. My name is Dan Clement. I'm Executive Creative Director for Stalls. You can find me there. At most of the big shows. And also at danclement.com. So for almost maybe 30 years, actually, plus, I think I've been known as the Photoshop guy. I've been working in Adobe Photoshop since version 2, before they even had layers in it, right? So I am an absolute Photoshop guy. I love it. I use it every day, but that's my job, right? I'm the art guy, so I have to fool with all the things, and all the things meaning alternatives as well, right? And especially today, when you have AI apps generating all the artwork, even better and faster than we could at Great Dane Graphics. They have most of them have a thing called the canvas area, right? Which would have some generative fill opportunities. And maybe we'll get into that in some future episodes here. But this particular one does not have a generative fill, but that's kind of almost the only thing it doesn't have that Photoshop has. So you can get by with maybe using the canvas areas in some of the AI apps to do those kinds of things. But this has almost everything else, right? So it is a what for what new version or a free version of Photoshop. And that's the crazy part, right? So it is free. So that means you're going to see these ads, right? Which is, kind of annoying. If you keep it full screen, you forget about them pretty quick, right? You're just working on and stuff. Or you can do like this. Look, don't tell anybody that, but now I can't see it, right? So if I'm going to create my own artwork in here, I'm going to come in and I can hit, new project here, or go to file new. So let's go ahead and hit the new project, because this is one of the most important things that we can do when creating our artwork is this. We fill out this information here. Now, here's some more ads. I wouldn't recommend doing this because that can get really goofy, right? It's not that big a deal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to inches, and I'm just going to show you at Great Dane Graphics that when we created all of our artwork, I went 14 by 14, right, at 300 pixels per inch. And for some reason, as soon as I raise up this pixels per inch, it goes to 3.5 by 3.5. But you just got to kind of do it twice. Still one goofy little thing, and I don't understand why that is, but it's a thing. So I showed you. There you go. It's done. We're past it. My backgrounds, I can click on it. It's white, black, or transparent. I always create on a transparent background. And if you're going to be printing artwork for DTFs and things like that and sending them out, maybe to have them printed or whatever, or you're going to print on your own equipment, most of the equipment manufacturers want you to use an sRGB color profile. So I'm just going to leave it there. I'll hit create. And then we get this. This is our transparent background, right? We have gray and white checkers in there. And if you look at the interface looks exactly like Photoshop. I ain't gonna lie. So watch Command 0 or Control 0. It's my shortcut to fill my screen. Same. Almost all of the shortcuts are the same from Photoshop to here. So if you're using Photoshop now and you're paying that creeping up to $60 a month for the suite that you don't want to pay for, or you're paying $20 a month maybe just for Photoshop, you can literally legit, if you have your shop creating designs and artwork things, you don't need to. This is legit and it's rock solid. It's pretty amazing. So over here on the left hand side are all the tools, right? If I click on a tool, for instance, and hold my mouse down, you can see almost all the tools have this little arrow in the bottom right corner. Guess what? Just like Photoshop. So if I choose this tool, click and hold, I have a magic wand tool, quick selection tool, and object selection, right? Lasso tool, I can click and hold, polygon, magnetic lasso. Guess what? Just like Photoshop. So all these tools, right? Here's another one. We got spot healing brush, patch tool, red eye tool. I mean, all the things. I don't know how this is legal, but these guys have been around doing this for a long, long time. Now, anybody that's ever taken my classes, Photoshop classes or whatever at shows, if I go to this image menu and I come down to adjustments, I like to call this Photoshop's Corvette engine, right? We just lifted the hood. Well, guess what? This is Photope's Corvette engine. Same power, same stuff. And it's super, super powerful, right? So I spent a lot of time in this menu for lots of things. So let's go ahead and over here real quick, we got, we have the text tool panels. We have paragraph panels, all the things. We have layers, channels, and paths, right? We got swatches over here. So we got effects, right? We can lock things. We got photo mask, adjustment layers, all that kind of stuff, right? So it's really a free version of Photoshop. Now, the two things. Obviously, you have the ads, no big deal, but that is a thing you got to deal with. And number two, you need an internet connection, right? So it will reach out to the cloud and it needs that interactivity. So let's just show a couple of things real quick. I'm going to go to my file menu, right? I can hit open and I can choose an image, right? So we're going to bring that image in, and there it is. It's one layer. It's generated on a white background because in my AI app, I asked it to isolate on a white background. So there it is. But if I want to change the color of this happens to be sort of a monochromatic image, right? So what I can do is just like I would do it in Photoshop, right? There's 10 ways to do anything in Photoshop and in here, as a matter of fact, because it has all the same tools. I say that as a caveat because there's one or two things that you can live without that it doesn't have. But almost, I would say 98% of the features that Photoshop has, it's in here, and this is free. So there's that. But in order to change this, if I go to image menu, right, and I go to adjustments and I come down to hue saturation, I'll get this window. Well, this window is all the things that I would normally have in my hue saturation window in Photoshop. So this being a monochromatic style image, if I just want to hue shift that color, I grab my hue slider and I start moving it around, and I can change it to the color that I want, right? And whatever that color is, maybe it's nice teal color. I don't know. I can saturate it up if I want. I can desaturate it all the way down, just like in Photoshop, and make it a grayscale, right? So just so you know that that's what this stuff is here for. So find a color that you like. I dig green. I can hit OK. Yeah, I just changed the color that fast, right? So next thing I can do is go to File menu here. And here's another thing I can go up to this File menu, and there is no new or there's no open file, right? So what you got to try to do when you're working inside of Photopea is just use this list of menus here. So I'm going to go to File, Open again. We'll open something else, maybe a master drop down. Oh, no, let's do this. I'm going to open this one, right? which is cool. I'll make it fill my screen so you can see it a little bit easier. AI generated, obviously, because I can spot AI artwork from 5 miles away, but it's cool. So there's that. So I think, again, image, right? Adjustments. And I can go to hue saturation, and I'll do the same thing. If I move my hue slider, look what happens. It literally changes the information in here. Now, if I reset this, that's gray. It's kind of like a really warm gray, but it's a gray. But there's gray data. That's the stuff that it's going to change, right? It's going to change it in Photoshop or here. It doesn't affect your blacks and it doesn't affect your whites, but it will change any of the in betweens. So if I wanted this to be a team color, right? I don't know, whatever your team happens to be. Where I went to school in my high schools back in the day, something like that, I can saturate it up. That would work. I can put Archbishop Shaw on there, and there's that, right? So, one more hue slider there. So let me go ahead and open up the next level here. A couple minutes, then we got to roll. So I'm going to open this one, right? Fill the screen here. So obviously another AI generated artwork, but if I want to change these colors, and that's, to me, that's why I like to show this piece of it, because that is one of the biggest things that we're going to need. AI can generate great artwork. You can ask it to use this lion and do it in green and white or purple colors, but it still may not give you everything you need. So you got to be able to fine tune it. So this here, if I want to get rid of that blue, make it a team color, image adjustments, hue saturation. Anytime I'm going to change color in Photoshop, I'm going to go to this one window almost all the time, right? In fact, I'm going to go there every time. And sometimes, probably in 2% of the cases, it may not give me what I need. So I got to do something different. But for 98% of the time I'm ever going to need a touch of color, this works just fine for me. So I want to change this, just the blue. I don't want to change the lion face color specifically. So that's where the drop down menus come in. So I can come in here and say, you know what, let's change this cyan. That would be up in here. And again, we told Photopea to focus on that. So now it's just changing the color, right? To, again, let's just assume I want to do something with my, my high school or local college we have around here. I could do like that. Now, Southeastern Lions, this will work perfectly well for it. So it's super fast. It's super easy. It's rock solid. You just need an internet connection and either ignore those ads or scoot them out of the way. But if you never tried it, guess what? It's free. Go get it and see if you can save yourself 50 plus bucks a month. I think it's worth it. So that's all I got.
Okay. Everybody back?
All right. Yeah, love it. Thank you, Dane. Sorry, we're having some technical issues on this side, so I think we're all back here now. You know what? Let's pop Dane back in here real quick. Yeah, thanks, Dane. Appreciate that. And see, now when Terry said at the start of the show that we use Dane's word, it's legit. He proved that is Dane's word. So
it's legit.
Yep. All right.
So if you're building your business, you're brand new to it, whatever, you're just trying it, see if I like it. Don't spend the money. I wouldn't. If I didn't need Photoshop for my day job.
Yeah.
If I was let's put it this way. If I was designing t-shirts and doing the things, I wouldn't do it. Not necessary.
Yeah. Love it.
Awesome.
Thank you, sir. All right.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, guys. See ya.
Later.
That's on me, Eric. All right. Well, thank you guys. I think that is Evie Mux's way of telling us it's time to call this. Everybody's saying, love it, Dane. Thanks, Dane. So good stuff there. We appreciate everybody tuning in and checking that out. But we have come to the close of another show. I want to thank you guys for another good conversation. We really went deep on one main area. So let's see how we do next week and if we can get through. But we have made the executive decision that we will continue this conversation. Not really continue, but hit those points, right? Again, Terry had a really great way for us to kind of say, okay, if we were an active decorator, how would we set up the education in our business, right? And what ways would we go about that? So we'll noodle on that, and then we can also talk about what we think is the future of education and what we're seeing, or what maybe even what we're hoping for too. So looking forward to that conversation with you guys next week.
Yeah, education in our shops and education when we get new employees. Let's talk about that as well. So
Absolutely. Good point. Yep.
Eric, thanks for pushing the buttons and coming on, being a guest, and
when they work
again next week.
Happy to do it whenever they're actually doing what they should do, and when we can get ourselves reined in. But yeah, glad to be here as always.
It's been a great show. Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Terry. Good job. As we mentioned, tune in next week, and then we've got some other topics coming up. We've got some guests on the hook here, so looking forward to some future shows as well. We're so grateful and blessed, and I think we're about 8 shows away from number 600, guys. Just FYI.
Wow.
Yep, good stuff.
Awesome. All right. Until then, I'm Terry Combs. He's Eric Campbell. He's Aaron Montgomery,
and that was the 2 regular guys.
Here we go. We're out.
Awesome.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of 2 Regular Guys. We're here because of listeners like you, and we're so grateful to have you on this journey with us. For more valuable insight, be sure to visit our website, 2regularguys.com, and join the conversation on our Facebook page. And hey, if you or someone you know has expertise, a unique perspective, or a story worth sharing, we'd love to have them as a guest on the show. Just reach out. Remember, success in this industry isn't just about the equipment you own or the techniques you've mastered. It's about the mindset you bring and the connections you build. Keep learning, stay curious, and don't be afraid to think differently. Keep pressing on, and we'll catch you on the next episode of